big D&D announcements, House of the Dragon Season 2, and Godzilla rules at the box office.
Let them fight.
Welcome to Tabletop News Tuesday, our first news rundown of the week. Today we're breaking down all the D&D news out of PAX Unplugged. We're talking about that new House of the Dragon trailer, and we're gushing about our favorite monstrous kaiju. Remember, if you like these kinds of videos, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons so we can keep making them.
I wish there was a solution to this very common problem.
Now, on to the news.
Holy shit, there's a lot of news.
Dungeons & Dragons has announced 2 new books, and we may or may not know when they're coming out. This weekend at PAX Unplugged, Wizards of the Coast announced Vecna, Eve of Ruin, and Quests from the Infinite Staircase, 2 new adventure books that are due to come out in 2024. Vecna, Eve of Ruin is the new D&D campaign that takes place across the D&D multiverse and features Vecna as the big bad. We kind of already knew about this. While Quest from the Infinite Staircase is a new anthology book that updates several classic D&D adventures for 5th edition, kind of like Tales from the Yawning Portal or Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and also introduces a new cosmic level baddie to D&D's canon. Now, shortly after these books were announced, promotional images were posted on D&D's Twitter account stating that the books would be released in May and July of 2024. However, a few hours later, the original images were pulled down and replaced with new promo images that lacked any sort of date on them. Wizards didn't provide any other clarification on whether the social media dates were accurate, but we'll note that they weren't mentioned in any way during the PAX panel. In other D&D news, Wizards of the Coast is bringing back D&D Tournaments. At PAX Unplugged, Wizards also announced plans to launch Descent into the Lost Caverns of Tsokanth? I'm not really sure how you say that made-up word. However, it's a new single-session adventure based on the classic 1982 module that's also Lost Caverns of that T-sounding fantasy word. As part of this new adventure's release, Wizards will also provide a tournament scoring system to use for in-store play and conventions. D&D tournaments are actually a long-standing tradition dating back to the first Gen Con and Origins conventions. Some of the earliest D&D modules were actually designed with tournament play in mind, which basically involved clearing out a dungeon as quickly and as efficiently as possible. The Tomb of Horrors was actually designed specifically for tournament play, with a big part of the appeal being how long could you last inside that horrific dungeon. Now, Wizards didn't have any sort of details as to how 5e tournament play will exactly work, but we'll have a full breakdown when those rules are eventually released.
You go to your people. I want a full investigation.
And finally, in more Wizards of the Coast D&D news, Wizards of the Coast is also releasing a Making of the Original Dungeons & Dragons book, which will also be released in 2024. The new book will feature original notes and correspondence between Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, along with pages from the original D&D rulebooks. While the older D&D rulebooks, some of which are barely more than pamphlets, have been reprinted several times, usually corresponding with some kind of D&D anniversary, the behind-the-scene look at the making of the game should be pretty fascinating to read, especially as, at the time, there was really no such thing as a tabletop RPG.
I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
Moving on from Dungeons & Dragons, let's talk about a franchise that features both dungeons and dragons. HBO released the new trailer for Season 2 of House of the Dragon over the weekend. While Season 1 set the stage for the infamous Dance of the Dragons, this season will feature the full Targaryen Civil War, which will feature an impressive amount of death and betrayal. Are you ready for brooding, predictable but shocking betrayals and dragons? The new season comes out on HBO and Max, but not HBO Max, that doesn't exist anymore. Well, it all comes out next summer.
And no war so bloody as a war between dragons.
The The creator of The Witcher said that Netflix never listened to his ideas for the show, which is pretty clear if you've ever watched that show. In a recent interview at Vienna Comic-Con, Andrzej Sapkowski talked about visiting the Netflix Witcher set. The set was tremendous, he said. I gave them some ideas, but they never listened to me. It's normal. Who's this? It's a writer. It's nobody. Sapkowski has always had mixed feelings about the adaptation of his books, saying that sometimes it's very nice for me, sometimes it isn't, and also, he's never played the video game, so the fact that he's a little bit skeptical about the Witcher Netflix series, not exactly a surprise.
If I have to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all.
Speaking of The Witcher, CD Projekt Red has said that the new game will continue Geralt's story. In a recent interview with Lega Nerd, the game's director Sebastian Kalam said that they needed to balance finding new fans with bringing in a new generation of Witcher players. The Witcher 4 won't be out for some years, he said, and it'll be a long time since the previous one, so we cannot just target the audience fond of the saga. I will note that they have re-released The Witcher 3 like a dozen times. So, we must also build a new community, he said. On that note, I believe I can say it'll be an excellent entry point for many players without forgetting the longtime fans who still wish to follow Geralt's adventures. However, Geralt voice actor Dave Cockle told IGN that he thinks that the game will focus on Ciri. The best theory I've heard, because it does make sense, is the theory that they'll focus on Ciri and her adventures in some way, shape, or form, Cockle said in the interview, because, spoiler alert, in the books, Ciri travels between dimensions and between worlds. It's one of her powers, and she does a little bit of that in the game. So I think it would be a really exciting thing for Witcher 4 to focus on Ciri's adventures in some way. Talk about mixed messages. Really, we're probably going to get both those characters in the new game.
It's just common sense.
And finally, Godzilla reigns supreme at the box office. Godzilla -1 scored an impressive $11 million at the box office last weekend, marking the second biggest debut for a foreign language live-action title of all time. This might be the best Godzilla movie of all time, as it reframes Godzilla in the context of a Japanese pilot coming to terms with his wartime past, and also treats Godzilla as an absolute menace instead of some kind of superhero or protector. This Godzilla is terrifying, and you need to see it in theaters, especially as you only have like 4 days unless Toho decides to extend the box office release.
戦争が終わってないんです。
今度の戦いは未来を生きるための戦いなんです。
Now, we're in this Godzilla renaissance of sorts, with Godzilla -1 revitalizing the Toho movie franchise, while Legendary is expanding its version of Godzilla with the new Monarch series that's on Apple TV, and next summer's Godzilla x Kong movie, which brings together Godzilla and Kong with a robot arm against a bunch of monkeys. While I'm not as high on the MonsterVerse as some folks, even I'm stoked to see that Godzilla has apparently watched the Barbie movie like the rest of us, and he enjoys pink. Anyways, that's all the news that we have for today. Let us know what your favorite news story was in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.